And welcome to You and the Law, a Chicago Bar Association production that provides information on a variety of legal and public policy matters. I'm your host for today. I'm Max Barrick. I'm a partner and the head of litigation at the Garfinkel Group, LLC, which is a civil rights firm that focuses on plaintiff or worker side labor and employment matters. I'm also vice president of NELA-Illinois and co-chair of its legislative and communications committees. I'm very excited today about our guests. Today, we're going to be conducting a roundtable Q&A discussion that addresses racial equity in the context of litigating employment discrimination matters, with panelists discussing their experiences going to law school at historically Black colleges and universities, as well as perspectives on representing individuals in cases of that nature from both the employer and the employee side. With us today are two wonderful attorneys. First is Chiquita Hall-Jackson. Chiquita is the founder and principal of Hall-Jackson and Associates. Chiquita's practice focuses on protecting whistleblowers, those who have experienced and survived workplace discrimination, harassment, and retaliation, as well as several other areas of employment law. Chiquita earned her Juris Doctor from Southern University Law Center and was recently named the first African-American president of NELA-Illinois. Welcome, Chiquita.
Thanks for having me.
Also with us today is Brian Jackson. Brian is also an incredible attorney. He is a partner at Laner-Muchin, where he represents employers in all manner of disputes, including but not limited to wage and hour disputes, claims of harassment, discrimination, and retaliation, as well as several other areas of law. Brian, prior to joining Laner-Muchin, Brian served with distinction in the Air Force and honorably retired as a Master Sergeant from the 41st Aerial Port 403rd Reserve Wing at Keesler Air Base in Mississippi. Brian also earned his Bachelor's of Arts and Juris Doctor from Southern University. Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
So let's kick this off. Brian, I'm going to go to you first. And I want to start because you both have an experience that I certainly cannot relate to and didn't have. You both went to institutions that I referred to a little bit in my introduction that are called historically Black colleges or universities. Today, we're going to refer to them in shorthand as HBCUs. And you went to those as opposed to a term you guys both taught me called predominantly white institutions or PWIs. Brian, let's start with you. Can you explain for everybody watching at home, what does it mean to go to an HBCU and what is a PWI?
Sure. So for my undergraduate experience, because I also went to Southern University, it was at a college where the majority of the students were of African-American background. And that was different from my high school background. I attended Robert E. Lee High School. So, and again, I'm from the Deep South. And also I went to a private Catholic school where minorities were the minorities at both of those schools. So when it was time to go to undergraduate, being from Baton Rouge, it was an easy choice for me to go to Southern University. The experiences that I can best describe or that I felt comfortable. I didn't feel like I was an outsider, that I had to constantly worry about what others around me were thinking or saying. I had mixed experiences with teachers in terms of their backgrounds. Just because you're at a historical Black university doesn't mean that you're going to have all Black professors. It doesn't work that way. So what you do find is that a lot of the professors that teach at these schools have a passion for civil rights and for the struggles that African Americans have gone through in order to get quality education in America. For example, my school, Southern University, was founded because we needed a way to educate Blacks, and Louisiana State University was not yet ready to integrate to have Blacks attending their university. So for me, it was a no-brainer to go to Southern University. And then when it was time for law school, I had an opportunity to go to LSU or Southern University. But Southern University really put forth an effort to bring me into the fold. Not only did they recruit me, but they provided me with financial support. And that was very, very helpful. And I truly enjoyed my experience at Southern Law School, which again, and I don't know the exact numbers, but I would imagine that probably a third of the students were Caucasian, whereas at LSU, I would say that minorities probably are in the low teens in terms of the percentage of the student population.
I think that answers the second question too, then, which is what is a predominantly white institution? And am I fair to say it's an institution that was not founded as an HBCU would qualify then?
Correct, and it's also going to be a university that's not, their mission isn't the education of what I would call marginalized, in the sense of how minorities have been treated in terms of educational opportunities. These are your traditional colleges, whether they're private or state, that have existed for hundreds of years and were founded to educate Caucasian Americans.
I was going to ask a follow-up that does it matter if they have a history of segregation? But I think that might be a dumb question, because most, if not all of them, have at least some history of that in some way, shape, or form.
That's definitely going to be the case in the South. I'm not sure of the historical perspective from Northern universities, but I think Chiquita and I both would tell you that in the South, when we're talking about the Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Virginia, that is definitely going to be the history.
Well, Brian, thank you for sharing that experience with us and for educating us on that. Chiquita, that's a good segue to speak with you as well. You also attended Southern University for law school, but unlike Brian, you did attend a PWI for undergrad. So you're in a position to tell us about those different experiences. What was the difference in experiences for you, other than obviously you're an undergrad versus you're in law school? Setting that part aside, can you talk to us a little bit about the difference in experience as a student of color at a PWI versus an HBCU?
Yes. So the difference I noticed, honestly, was trying to fit in and feel accepted when you're at a PWI. I think you're going to have that across the board, just like you as a new student trying to enter any new school or institution. But the main thing is, and crazy, Brian had this different route where he actually had a desire. I did not have a desire to go to a historical Black college. My mother went to Northern Illinois University. I was a campus baby, so it was always my desire to go to NIU. And I got in for undergrad, but I didn't get in for law school. And so eventually I was just applying to all these schools. I met with my old professor from Northern Illinois University. He said, you need to start looking at a certain set of schools. And Southern just happened to be on that list, and I applied to it. And it was not until I did the pre-law program, and a young lady, she was Caucasian, she raised her hand in the pre-law class, and she said, I understand that this is an HBCU. What does that mean? And the professor goes, if you had to ask that question, maybe you shouldn't be here. And I kind of froze, just like, wow. But my whole thing was, I always had this perception growing up that I did not want to go to a historical Black college, because I wanted myself to have this experience is going up where when I get into corporate America, I know how to deal with different races. And I know that corporate America didn't look like that. However, I was glad I stumbled upon SUBC and that it was Southern University, because the culture was so rich. And like Brian said, it wasn't, although it's predominantly African-American and Black, we had Caucasian students there and other races as well. But to go to a class and see a professor that looks like you and doing the things that you dream and desire. We had plenty of professors who not only came in academia and taught, they actually was running practices in the background. We had people that was judges that, taught night classes. So it was just empowering to see someone that looked like me actually doing everything I desired to do beyond law school. So that was encouraging. And you didn't get that at the predominantly white schools, So I think that's the difference. You just have someone that's there, so you know it's possible, and you hear the struggles. My grandfather did not go to law school here, or as a lawyer or a judge, or have a friend, or the networks that you introduced me to, Max. Like, those don't exist. So to see and hear my professors talk about their struggles and just dedication and desire to want better. And lastly, the alumni will have what is it called? The football games. And you guys had the cookouts before. I forget what it's called. Tailgating.
Yes.
So you'll have the tailgating, and then you'll go and you'll hear these. This is my aunt. She's a doctor. And it was just like, oh my goodness, this is so powerful to see that this is a successful family, but they all look like me. And so I think that was definitely what I didn't get at Northern Illinois University. And do believe, like Brian said, those professors made it known that just because you're here doesn't mean you're going to have an easy way. And they stayed on our butts, and they made sure that we got our work done because they wanted to see more of us in the field. So that was definitely rewarding.
So I'm going to go off script a little bit. And I want to throw this to both of you because I think you both sort of alluded to it. Chiquita, you just mentioned that a lot of these professors were adjuncts in some ways, where they had careers and practices that they maintained as they taught. So to either or both of you, do you feel, having only attended an HBCU for law school, obviously you don't have a point of comparison, do you feel you had opportunities from a networking or from internship or just professional perspectives coming from an HBCU and having access to those professional connections that you might not have had coming out of PWI institutions where there was less of a focus on ensuring students of color succeed?
I believe I did. I actually had opportunity to stay in Baton Rouge or Louisiana area and work at the Louisiana Attorney General's office, but I just wanted to come back home to Chicago. But I know I feel like I would thrive more, and I did have a better resources if I need to go back to professors and try to ask them to review some writing samples and things like that. I think, honestly, on an equal playing field, I could still go back to my network at Northern Illinois University, but the passion for me to do better, I believe, came strictly from Southern, that built my network along with my colleagues, definitely.
Brian?
So for me, my focus was a little different when I entered law school. When I entered law school, I was already in my 30s. I had served in the military. I had a long-term girlfriend who's now my wife of 20 years.
Congratulations.
So prior to entering law school, my closest friend, who's also an attorney, also attended Southern University. And he was recruited by Sidley and Austin here in Chicago. So when I entered law school at Southern, I knew that there would be opportunities at large law firms, provided you met certain qualifications. And what I mean by that is, if you're at a school like Harvard, I know that Harvard has things that you can do to distinguish yourself, like be on law review. But the fact you're at Harvard means you're going to get a job offer at a large law firm. Whereas my goal was, I wanted to network with folks who could get me an opportunity to put my foot in the door in the large law firms. And that's what, thankfully, Southern was able to do for me. The reason why I'm in Chicago is because Sidley and Austin also recruited me. So the thing that I liked about Southern University was you didn't lose out on opportunities by going to an HBCU.
So that's a good segue, Brian. You're talking about large law firms, and that's obviously going to lead us to both of your areas of practice. Brian, it's sort of a standard thing when you're at a larger firm and you do employment law, chances are you're probably going to be representing employers and companies and not necessarily individuals. It's not always the case, but obviously it's more common. How did you may have answered this implicitly already, but how did you end up on the defense side, given the civil rights bent to Southern University, to what we're talking about today, and all that's entailing?
Sure. So if you don't mind, and I apologize if the story takes a little while to unwind. In 2004, I was a summer intern at Sidley and Austin. There were 90 of us there. This is a firm with more than 1,000 attorneys. So when you're there, you're not doing focus work. You are doing work for different groups. So you may do some work for antitrust, for general lit. I started to perform projects for labor and employment. And that's when I knew, hey, I like this. This is what I want to do. Also, I had no grand ideas that I was going to make partner at a large law firm. So I thought was, how can I get skills that I can transition once that road has run its course? And labor and employment was something that I could take those skills and be portable, whether it was with another plaintiff's firm or working by myself. So when I went in, I thought that this is the type of work I'm going to do, and I don't know how long it's going to be defense side. Now, the issue of what I would call the social moral conflict. When I get to Sidley in Austin and they tell me, yes, you have been selected for the labor and employment group, I start to get these cases, disabilities, discrimination, sexual harassment. And I first thought, how am I going to represent employers given my background, given the challenges that I've seen? But what happened was when I started to get these cases and looking at the facts, I was able to look at them from a different perspective than probably the in-house attorney who originally got the case and then got the law firm involved. Whereas they would look at this and say, well, this is BS. There's no merit to this. I would be able to look at the case and say, well, wait a minute. I think this is what the employee is saying, and this is why the employee feels that he or she was mistreated. And based upon that, I think that if you've got a jury that is a mixed jury, here's where you are going to have possible exposure. So my background was such that I was able to help employers resolve matters where they may not have seen, hey, you're going to have a problem here. And I think that that was very helpful, not only to my clients, but also to me. I can say that I've handled probably hundreds of cases, but I don't have the experience of the super egregious case where it's the profanity, the slurs, or someone who has been sexually assaulted. Most of the cases are he say, she say, where one person got a promotion and one person didn't. So, again, my background allowed me to give my employer clients different perspectives. And that is how I sleep at night. So that was how I was able to sleep while doing management side work.
Oh, and before we throw this to Chiquita, I'm also, just like Chiquita, a plaintiff side lawyer, but I think we would all be remiss if we didn't recognize that, especially in the context of what we call discrimination or disparate treatment cases, right? You said someone got a promotion, I didn't. This is not meant to be a pun. They're not always black and white. There are a lot of reasons why those happen that might involve racial or some other bias, right? But they don't always. They're not always cut and dry, right? It can be, many things can be true all at once where someone may feel they're more qualified, but the law may or may not recognize that they were discriminated against. So, and management side needs jobs, they need lawyers too. Everybody needs good lawyers who keep them out of trouble and make them do the right thing. A lot of companies do the right thing and some do get railroaded. So it's good to have good and thoughtful people like you on that side, Brian. You should sleep just fine.
Thank you so much.
I agree.
I say that never having had to go up against you. So call me back.
Look, I had the pleasure of learning from very skilled attorneys at Sidley and Austin, and then Fisher and Phillips, and then my colleagues here at Laner-Muchin. And the thing that we always learned was civility. I treat all of my opposing counsels with the utmost civility. So I think that's that's a trait where, we can do our jobs and be good to each other.
I agree.
Disagree without being disagreeable. I think
Correct.
that's the way my partner always puts it. So then, Chiquita, I want to jump to you then. So on the entirely other side of the coin, professionally, you represent plaintiffs, workers in these cases. Can you talk about what led you to that spot and how your experience at Southern University helped move you in that direction, if it did?
Yes. So what led me here, honestly, I started off as a general practice, and I did a little bit of everything, including criminal and family law. And those were the two that I weeded out first. A great lawyer told me, I'll shout out John Ireland here, that because someone tried to make me feel bad for having a card that had all these practice areas on the back. Like, you're fresh out of law school, how do you know all this? Because I just studied the bar and I had to learn review every topic under the law, learn when I'm fresh out of law school, all the stuff still jammed in my head. So why not take every area of practice that I wanted to have a passion about? But long story short, those came to end when I realized that this family law, I didn't get a passion out of it. So then criminal law, I didn't get the passion out of it either. So essentially it led me to a good friend of mine's calling. Her father was fighting a railroad case over at OSHA. And he had put over 20 plus years, if not 30 years in the company. And they were getting ready to get rid of him over one violation that he had out of his entire career. And I said, you know what? I think that is so wrong. Like, this man gave up time with his family and all this stuff, and he was getting ready, very close to retirement, if not eligible for retirement at that point. And I just saw that it was a game. And so age discrimination is what got me here, is because I saw so many people will give so much time and dedication to a company, and I witnessed my own mother come home with swollen feet for working 16 hours a day for working at the Department of Correction. And so to see, and she also at one point was let go, but due to a great union was let to get back in. And to witness these people take time away from their family, can't make it to events, and all this stuff, and just have a company treat them as another number, that really upset me. So I was more than excited to represent this guy. And then as I would get more age discrimination cases, race definitely was there as far as passion-wise, to see people get treated. As Brian said, there's a lot of times where you get a pass over for promotion. It's not necessarily race, sometimes it's nepotism, right? I'm hooking my girlfriend's child up, So a lot of people don't see that as being wrong. But that's what I felt the need was to see, as people rely on African Americans in these settings. I will hear so many women say, I had to train his daughter, his best friend daughter. I had to train this blonde hair, blue-eyed chicks, regardless of how they was related. Some of them was randomly picked. But I was the one who was sitting here in this seat for over 20 years. And every time I applied for that position, it went to a certain gender and a certain prototype. And so with that also gave me passion. And so my role from Southern's, that the passion for civil rights and just want to have, because I know our people are qualified. And so that's one thing that Southern gave me, because you hear it all the time. I heard someone actually say, I would love to consider more Black people, but I just don't think, there's not enough out there. I think that's qualified or have the education or whatever it's needed. We're out here. It's just that you guys are not giving us the opportunities. And so when I can get, that's what I wake up for, is that if I can help my employees, everything is not about the money. I tell them all the time, it's not about the money. If I can get you an advancement or get someone to respect what you bring to the company, I think that's a win in itself. And that's what motivates me.
I think that's a really important answer, Chiquita. Before we go, I want to throw another curveball to both of you. We talked today about the importance of equity and diversity in the employment discrimination field. It's a very broad question and a very broad topic. It's intended to give you some free rein. To either or both of you, can you talk a little bit about why it matters to have people of different backgrounds, skin color, race, ethnicity, really every origin in our field on both sides, why the diversity and viewpoints matters? Brian, I think you may have said some about this earlier.
Yes, and I did want to follow up because, I forgot to mention this. When you're on the defensive side of the V, a lot of times your involvement is before things have gone completely sideways. When the two of you have clients come in and they need help, things have already gone left.
Mhm.
So I think one of the reasons why you want to have minorities on that management side is because when the corporation is thinking about, hey, we've got these candidates, this is what we're thinking about doing. Here's where it may get a little tricky. Let's talk to our lawyers. When they make those calls, you want minority lawyers in that conversation saying, hey, look, here's what you may be against if you don't give this person that opportunity. And it's just what's been spoken about here today. You've got this qualified individual who may be overlooked for this position if you decide to give it to someone else, and you just can't justify it. So having minorities on the management side means that often you have someone who has the ear of the employer on the counseling side before decisions are made. And then once there is a conflict and once the plaintiff's attorney is involved and the plaintiff's attorney is saying, hey, this is how my client's been done wrong, when you've got the management attorney who comes in and evaluates the case, it's good to have a minority looking at that file saying, hey guys, I think that you're not looking at this from the employee's perspective. And if this employee projects well in court, you may have some problems. Let's talk about settling this case. So I think that's why you want to have a minority on the management side of the V.
I think it's a wonderful point, Brian. Chiquita, unfortunately, we're almost out of time. Do you want to give a very quick position on that?
No, I would say I agree 100% with Brian. I remember when I was interning for the state's attorney's office, and I asked this lady, how can you represent those criminals, defend the criminals? And no, she worked for the state, but she told me she came over from the defendant side and she once had my perspective. But a wise attorney told her, you can do more on this side of the V, right? Because the judge is only stuck with what the statute allows as far as sentencing. But me, I have the power as a state's attorney to maybe downgrade your charge to something lesser. So what Brian is saying is definitely, I can always say, hey, Brian, why are you over there? I think you should join me over here in this fight. But I do appreciate that I can have a reasonable opposing counsel and say, look, it might not be outright racism as far as no one is smart enough right now to come out, or dumb enough, I should say, to come out and say the N word and this word and that slur and this. However, we know what it feels like to be passed over after I'm well educated. So to have someone on both sides, I think is excellent. And just to have an inclusive work environment where everyone can flow and feel comfortable and also bring in different perspectives, not only as it relates to the case in front of us, but just the work environment. And are you treating, you're sitting up here, you're an attorney and this is what you're fighting for, but are you treating your employees the same way that you're asking this employer to treat their employees? I think that's why it's very much needed.
Well, those are both really important answers. And I want to thank you both for taking time out of your extremely busy days to share your stories, to cover these really important and complicated topics with us in what I think was a really accessible and informative way. And just sharing your knowledge with us. So thank you both to Brian Jackson and Chiquita Hall-Jackson for coming on, for speaking with us today. Thank you to everybody at home for watching.